Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's Better Managers Briefing. I'm Anne Franca, the Chief Executive of the CMI, and every Friday at this time, we bring you news and views on management topics that matter. Now, today, I'm absolutely delighted to have the multi-talented and highly accomplished Rita Clifton, CBE. Alongside her board chairing and non-exec roles, Rita is a writer, keynote speaker, conference chair, and practitioner of all aspects of branding. She's somebody I've known and admired for decades. Welcome, Rita. It's delighted to have you on the show.
Thanks very much, Anne. And I could say exactly the same for you about long-term admiration. So it's very, very good to be here and looking forward to this.
Great. So now if you have a question for Rita, you can put it in the chat. We'll get to as many as we can during the broadcast. But let's start with the questions. Now, Rita has written, as I said, as an author, and she's recently written a book. And that book is called Love Your Imposter. Now, Rita, you're a well-known branding expert and non-exec chair, incredibly accomplished. What led you to write a book called Love Your Imposter?
Well, indeed. I think I wrote this book out of a joint sense of both frustration and also mission. And the reason for the frustration is that I've got more and more annoyed with how business can sometimes be seen as somehow a very inhuman place, occupied by Dr. Evils who somehow wake up in the morning and are thinking about how to despoil the environment and rip off shareholders, etc. Now, that's not my experience of so many of the people that I work in business with. Although I have to say, I did see an article the other day that talked about something like 12% of corporate leaders tend towards being psychopaths, corporate psychopaths. I thought that was a little disturbing, but my experience certainly is that actually we do have a lot of very, very decent human beings trying to do the right thing in the main. And I think bringing out that humanity is going to be really important. It's important right now. It'll be even more important, in my view, if we're going to create the kind of future that we want. And some of those human things we can all experience, frankly, are feelings of insecurity, imposter syndrome, absolutely. And I've certainly experienced this through most of my working life. And what I discovered is about 70% of other people tend to as well, even very high profile celebrities, you know, Tom Hanks, Michelle Obama, Emma Watson, Olivia Colman talks about every time she goes on set, she thinks she's going to get fired. But actually, that's a very human thing. And I think this is something that, again, as humans in business, we need to make sure that people feel that and see that about business leaders. Now, the other reason for writing a book was a sense of mission, which is that we absolutely have got to, as part of this more human thing, got to have a much better and well-balanced set of leaders at the top of organizations, a new type of leader that again reflects the kind of balance of humanity, both gender and also broader inclusion. And what I've found is so many women, but also much more diverse types of potential leaders do suffer from imposter syndrome. They can suffer from lack of confidence. And what I wanted to do in this book was to reassure the imposter thing is a normal human syndrome. So many of us share some of these things. It's a very, very human thing to do. And secondly, to share some of the things that I've found, I've experienced over the years, that I've felt and I've found to be effective in dealing with them, and also, again, giving you more confidence. So all round, I think it's really important that we're all a bit more open about the stuff that we as human beings feel. And frankly, that gives you more empathy with other humans who happen to be your customers, your stakeholders, and everything else. And that is a good thing for business. It's a good thing all round. And hopefully it'll be a good thing for the broader world too.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. Just a couple of things. I was judging the Young Consultant of the Year awards with the MCA the other day, and a couple of these highly accomplished young people, finalists, really, doing so well, talked about imposter syndrome. So you're absolutely right. And I've come across it certainly in my career. And of course, empathy leads to trust, which is so important. So the 70% that are suffering with this imposter syndrome. What's your advice for them? How should they engage with it? How should they love it?
Well, first and foremost, as that title suggests, I think it's really important that we try and change our mindset or change our relationship with our own imposter friends or foes. And the reason I think that is so important is that, bearing in mind, 70% of people say they experienced it. Now, for a small minority, they do find imposter feelings almost incapacitating, and they clearly need to get some professional help. That's about, say, 10% of people. Mm-hmm. But the vast majority of people who do experience these kinds of feelings, I do encourage a change of mindset. And what I mean by that, and what I do reflect in the book, is actually, in some weird and wonderful way, I found my imposter drive quite useful. I mean, my own imposter feelings, I think we'll all have our own, is that, this time is going to be the time that everything goes pear-shaped. Mm-hmm. Or that actually when you go for a new step in your career or a promotion or a new role or something, you can worry about whether or not you're going to be good enough, or indeed actually whether you deserve to be there. Even people like Hillary Clinton have talked about how when she first went to college, she looked around thinking all these people are going to be much smarter than her, but she found that actually a drive. So what I've recognized, I think, at this stage, and certainly in talking to so many more people, is that sometimes these drives can be useful to help you stretch yourself, practice more, work harder, etc. I mentioned Olivia Colman. She's found this, oh my goodness, am I going to get fired, really quite a propulsion in order to, make her give her very best performance. Mm-hmm. So when I was explaining these feelings to somebody, I happened to be speaking to a person who's a martial arts expert. I mean, what are the chances of that? I wouldn't know one end of a judo mat from another, I should just say. But what this person said was, changing your relationship or your thinking about this, in judo, you don't win by beating your opponent and fighting with them. You win by using their own weight to help you win. And I thought, what a great analogy that was, which is that you use the weight of your imposter to help you win. So now I'll look over my shoulder and go, I know you, and I know why you're there, and you're going to help me stretch myself, do more, develop myself more. And actually, in the end, that might be in some ways quite helpful. So that's why I'm saying, try to learn to love your imposter, because actually sometimes that can be really quite useful.
That's a brilliant insight. Use the weight of your imposter to win. That's a great insight. Love it. Love it.
Absolutely. And I think that the other part, just in terms of sort of tools and tips and techniques, what I've found over the years, and of course I happen to spend a lot of my day job working life in the branding industry, brand strategy, etc., I've actually found using some aspects of brand thinking to be quite helpful to yourself. Again, to think about who you are, what you're good at, maybe your career, future, your purpose, some of your goals, and everything else. So I found brand thinking quite useful. So clarity of what you stand for, that's what some of the world's most valuable brands do. It's very helpful to do that about yourself. Clarity about what you stand for. Coherence about how that shows up through everything you do. That's extremely important as well. If you want to run an organization, you've got to learn finance. You've got to learn, money and business talk, because the language of the boardroom is finance. And if you don't speak that language, you either won't get there or you won't make as much impact and have as much influence as you are when you get there. It's also really important on the coherence front, if you want to end up running something, to learn how to be a good communicator. Mm-hmm. If you can't influence people through communication, it obviously presents a real challenge. And we can all feel a bit fearful about, moments of communication, public speaking. It is one of the big fears, as you probably know, that people have in their lives. So you need to learn how to be a good communicator. And if we were to look at Malcolm Gladwell's outliers, and we believe the 10,000 hours, that means saying yes to a lot of public speaking engagements or presentation, communication opportunities, even if you are scared, to make sure that actually you're getting a lot of practice. And there are a lot of techniques, tools, etc., that I've picked up over the years from various courses and also from that 10,000 hours program that I find really useful and helpful to enable you to be a better and more confident communicator. These things are very important. And also you need to make sure you've got a positive mindset. There are a lot of personal development tools that you can use to make sure that you can get yourself into a more confident posture and the way you're speaking. So any number of tools and techniques that actually reflect who you want to be and where you want to be going. So make sure that's coherent.
Yeah,
and
those are all great points.
Absolutely. And on the leadership characteristic about great brands, by the way, you've got to keep on making sure that you are reinventing yourself, finding out new things, being curious and nosy about the broader world, because that's, again, how we renew ourselves and also move on. So just a few things, and obviously I go into quite a bit more detail in the book, and I do hope to be as honest and open as I can, which a lot of people have said they found quite reassuring. So that's been fantastic to have that sort of feedback.
Well, it's a great book. Please do look into it. Love Your Imposter. But of course, you've spoken a lot about branding, and you've just started another new company called Leaderbrand. How does it build on your branding expertise, and why and how is it a different approach to leadership development?
Well, just following on from the last point, I've found brand thinking to be very helpful in really developing a positive mindset about who you are, what your strengths are, what your purpose is, your goals, your short, medium and long-term goals, because they can clearly change over time. And then to think about what aspects of your skills and your knowledge, experience, and indeed mindset could really help you get on. So those sort of brand thinking skills applied to yourself can really give you longer term impact, longer term influence, and also longer term value if that's what you're aiming for. But actually, the other part of that, the crucially important part of that, in 2015, 2016, I was having a particularly challenging time from both a personal and professional point of view. And I got myself 6 coaching sessions with someone that I thought was extraordinary. And at the end of those coaching sessions, I had got clear about the purpose for the rest of my working life. I'd decided which organizations I was going to be part of, which I was going to leave, and so on. I developed some space for doing the book because that was very close to my purpose. And also, I set myself a program for learning a few more skills that actually I felt was still a gap in what I was doing. And so therefore, with this extraordinary coach, whose name is Catherine Baxendale, we were talking more about how to combine these two really fundamentally important things and very useful things, professional coaching skills, leadership coaching skills, and also applying brand thinking to yourself. And what is really, really important is to make sure that you are building your own unique leadership brand, your own unique brand of leadership, in a way that's actually in line with how the world is changing, what the world needs, what new businesses need in this extraordinary and sometimes quite fragile and challenging future. And also to have the confidence to be who you are. I mean, I know I say in the book, be your best self, flaws and all. And again, these techniques that we developed in bringing Leaderbrand to where it is now, these tools and techniques really do make the most of your strengths, your unique skills, your unique angle on what you're trying to do in the world and your goals, and then assemble the clarity of thinking, the knowledge, the skills, presentation, finance, self-belief, and a whole range of other tools and techniques that can really help you get there. So we found this a really effective way of helping people make the very most of themselves for the long term as well. It develops your skills and makes you influential and valuable for the long term in the ways that ideally you'd like to.
That sounds really great, Leaderbrand. Do check it out. And I know you've just founded it together with Catherine Baxendale. And by the way, if you have a question for Rita, put it in the chat. We will be taking questions shortly. But let's talk a little bit more generally. You've mentioned quite a lot about business and the world of business. Do you think the approach to leadership and management in the workplace will change fundamentally post-COVID, or do you think we'll simply restore factory settings? And what do you think would be the best way forward?
Well, I sincerely hope that we don't go back to factory settings, because those factory settings were getting the world on a very, very difficult trajectory. I mean, as you might know, one of my personal passions in life has been the environment and sustainability. And frankly, if we don't get the environmental things sorted out, there won't be any other issues left to worry about. And I think really what's happened over the last year of such intensity, there's a number of things, both good and much more challenging. I mean, on the good side, I think we've seen into people's homes and their lives and so on. We've had unruly pets and children running in and out of Zoom calls. We've seen into people's living rooms. I mean, honestly, having Zoom calls with business leaders when they've got their children's bunk beds in the back, this is a very, very humanizing thing. And I think that's a good thing, that we connect with people. And when we get together personally and physically again in a way that's more hybrid and balanced, I think that'll be a good thing. And by the way, when I was talking about Leaderbrand, what we want to do is bring people together so that they can support each other and learn from each other. And there does seem to be a real hunger and appetite to do that. So I'm hoping that this greater humanity and connection and understanding will actually be a good thing. I think the other thing that we've all realized is actually we can do a lot more collaboratively and much faster, and we don't all have to be in the same room all the time. A blended point of view actually is a very powerful point of view. We don't want to jump on a plane. We don't need to jump on a plane to go for an hour's meeting, you know, in Italy or, you know, anywhere else, when actually we can have a very good meeting, you know, just like this. And I think there's a lot of innovation and also development. So I think that this combination of more humanity, more understanding, and also a realization we can do things very differently. And then another axis, of course, that's lying through all of that is actually what we've seen from a social point of view, as well as from a sustainability point of view. And you know, when we look at things like Black Lives Matter and Me Too and so on, I do think we are having a genuinely different conversation about, you know, how we are all relating with each other. And again, the new types of leadership that we need in organisation, a new, much more diverse and inclusive type of leadership that we need in organisations. And again, I think that's why we need a rather new angle on leadership as well. So I think we are seeing some, you know, rather different things. Some of them are really quite positive. And of course, we've still got a climate crisis to deal with, as well as biodiversity and many of the other issues on which we depend. So I'm hoping that this will come together in greater understanding, greater awareness, greater inclusion, and of course a new type of leadership too. So so I'm hoping that good will come out of this. It's been a difficult year to be an optimist in some ways, but I think we all have to make sure that we are, you know, we create the future. The future is not written. We are all, as leaders, as managers, creating the future, and we need to create the kind of future that we all want to see.
I think that's a great point, and at CMI we completely agree with that point of view, and it certainly would be a once in a lifetime opportunity lost if we just restore factory settings and don't embrace the humanity that we've learned in the last year. Now, what about you personally as a leader? What have you learned during this prolonged pandemic crisis, and what advice would you give others?
Well, I've certainly learned from some of the topics that we've just covered, you know, that I don't have to be everywhere all the time. You know, you don't have to rush around, you know, across cities or onto planes and everything else. You can have good and powerful conversations, and frankly, you can get an awful lot more done sometimes in a day. I think, you know, for some people who may not love getting up very early in the morning, and I don't know whether or not you're a morning person or a night person, but certainly I've come across an awful lot of colleagues who have breathed a sigh of relief that they don't have to get up at 5 in the morning in order to go and, you know, fly off to a meeting in Europe. So
Yeah.
I've certainly learned a lot about presenteeism over the last year. And again, I've also learned an awful lot about how quickly we can get things done when we really put our minds to it. I mean, thinking about the climate crisis, we have managed as a globe to bring the most brilliant brains together and solve something in a fraction of the time it normally takes in order to get, vaccines, things working. Now, clearly, there are a lot of other rather challenging things happening in the world at the moment that doesn't speak to cooperation. But there are also some other aspects of awareness where we go, actually, that has helped people understand that so many of these issues, planetary issues, climate issues, biodiversity, the natural world, how we all work together, these things are all very connected. So from a personal point of view, actually, it's been good to see that greater understanding. I wouldn't have chosen this kind of terrible humanitarian crisis to bring it on. But on the other hand, I think it has reassured and supported the fact that actually we can, as a species, as a global community, really make things happen, and all together and faster, and using the resource of our sort of fellow humans from all kinds of parts of the planet, actually, that we wouldn't normally connect with. So I think I've learned that a lot. I think just the final thing is, connecting with other human beings. I mean, it's been difficult to see family as much as we would have liked to have done over the past year. And one of my daughters actually had a baby, during lockdown period, and that's been very, very challenging. And I think that just the ability to connect with people, to be with people, to hug people, I think that we've got quite a lot of pent-up hugs, shall I say, that's been pent up, over the last year. But I think it's certainly, made sure that I'm not going to take any of these things for granted in the future. Being with people, holding people, connecting with people, and clearly we can add to that through virtual means, through this new virtual world that we've managed to work with and live with over the last year. But just be able to go places, be with people. There is no substitute for connecting with our fellow human beings in every way that we can.
Absolutely, that's a great lesson. Look, we have some time now for questions, and our first question comes from Alice, and she says, what are the dangers of imposter syndrome if people can't learn to love them, not only for the individual concerned, but also those around them?
I think that's a very good question. And as I mentioned earlier, there are a small minority of people who really do struggle with imposter feelings, and they find them very debilitating, if not paralyzing. And therefore, it's really good to seek some professional help in that, because what you don't want to do is allow that to spiral. If you can't learn to love your imposter, all I would say is I think that you can certainly learn to recognize and live with, if not love, let's put it that way, to recognize that we all have drives, wherever they might come from. We've all got drives from our childhood, our school days, our first jobs or college, where you thought, oh my goodness, I'm not going to be able to do this. And indeed, at moments in our professional life, we have all had that. And I hope that that is reassuring, for 70% of people to realize that actually others still find the same thing. So I think if you can't learn to love, then certainly learn to recognize and learn to live with. And if that's difficult, then again, getting some professional help, that's also extremely useful too. In fact, it's fundamentally important. And the thing I'd say about that as well, and one of the reasons why I feel so strongly, and certainly in creating the work on Leaderbrand, the fundamentally important thing is to understand yourself. What is it that drives you? What are your priorities? What's your purpose? What are your goals? What are your values? And also, again, what lies behind all that? Because understanding yourself and having an awareness of that, bring it out to have a look at, so that actually you can be in more management control, or try to do more managing of what it is that drives you. You can then make some active choices. I think we've all worked, and I mentioned corporate psychopaths earlier. I do hope it's not 12%. Certainly that piece of research.
Oh, I've read that stat as well. I think it probably is, Rita, if we're honest.
Yeah, well, we've all come across just one or two corporate psychopaths in this world. And what you want to say to them is, do you know, you need to go and do some work on yourself, because you haven't got awareness of yourself and what drives you. That is being visited on all of the people around you, and you are creating a toxic environment. So please, you know, I believe, for example, you don't have the right to call yourself a leader unless you want to see other people be brilliant. That should be a motivation to help people. You want to see people be brilliant. There are some people we've all worked with who only seem to be able to feel good about themselves if they make other people feel smaller. Yeah,
you're right. But again, you know, try telling that to somebody like Donald Trump. Oops. Next question from Tom. I've just ordered your book. Do you think that the changes and unpredictability of the last year have heightened the impact of imposter syndrome?
I think that there is a danger that can happen, and actually in part because, you know, we are looking at ourselves, aren't we? We are looking at ourselves and what we're doing, our performance in inverted commas, in a way that we never did previously. I mean, you know, doing communication skills programs and things like that, you would video yourself, and that's a very, very useful thing to do, by the way. But I think nevertheless, over the last year, we've been looking at ourselves really intensely. And also, if you build relationships through empathy, through connecting with people, etc., I think that for some people, and certainly I felt this from time to time myself, it's been difficult to connect in the way that ideally you'd like. You can't read people's body language. You can't fully understand maybe some of the reactions and responses that otherwise that you can get. And sometimes you don't realize you can't read your impact on other people. That can make you think, oh my goodness, was that okay? Did they respond in the right way to what I was saying? So I think potentially it has, you know, created more types of you know, feelings about, oh my goodness, you know, do I deserve to do this? And the fact that for some people you haven't even met many of your colleagues. Some people I've worked with, companies I've joined or worked with over the last year, I don't even know how tall people are.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and when you meet them in real life, sometimes that can be a surprise. So I do think there's been a slight sense for some people of removal and alienation that hasn't really helped with those feelings. All I would say is it's really important to keep working through the sequence. You know, how clear are you about what you stand for? What's your purpose? What's your goals? You might well have changed your goals over the last year. I think many people have.
I'm sure you're right.
And so many colleagues. Keep on asking yourself that question and then adjusting what skills, what angle on skills, you know, what do you need to deepen or broaden or maybe eject? What sort of colleagues are you going to be wanting to work with in order to make sure that you are achieving what you want to in life? And just the last thing I'd say is I think a lot of people who maybe have come out of their, you know, their previous jobs, they want to set up new businesses. Now that's a moment of imposterdom if you've never done that before. And again, I think that's why using some of these thinking disciplines and self-development work, using some of the tools is fundamentally important.
Yeah, it's a great point. So question here from Nandi. Do you think that sustainability will get the attention it needs in boardrooms in the next couple of years, given, as you say, the way in which COVID has shown us that dramatic change is possible much more quickly than previously thought?
Yeah. Well, let's put it this way. If we don't do it, then I think that we're going to be looking into an abyss. But I'm not a pessimist. I'm definitely a glass half full person. And on the upside, when you have people like Larry Fink of BlackRock talking about taking money out of unsustainable assets and putting them into purpose-led, more sustainable assets, you know that there is something going on. If you just look at what's happening in the performance of purpose-led businesses, an organization like Unilever, their purpose-led brands are outperforming the others. And that's at the positive end, by the way. So, you know, good business is outperforming businesses that don't have such a strong purpose. And also, by the way, as part of that, as you know, more diverse leaders, more diverse boards, etc., that tends to lead to better performance in the business, more returns for less risk. Now, at the other end, on the risk front, what we are establishing is a really good evidence base for how actually, if you're not doing the right thing, if you are not looking at your range of activities from a sustainability angle, you as an organization are being downgraded in terms of value, because actually your investors know that it's a bigger risk. It's a bigger risk. They also know, by the way, that bad leadership, toxic leadership is a real risk, because you leak talent. And I think, one of the chapters in the book is nice guys don't finish last. I mean, nasty guys, bullies, etc. This is becoming a very, very expensive phenomenon in terms of, risk management. And so the good thing is we are seeing great evidence base for how actually, it's a big risk not to be sustainable. And there's also a big opportunity at the other end of organizations who are trying to be, much better, more enlightened. The final thing I'd say, and the thing that I've got incredibly inspired by, and I chair an organization called Forum for the Future, which is a non-profit sustainability organization, is that actually the step further is to help more and more businesses go for a regenerative and just future. So not just minimizing impact, but actually seeing what we can all do to create a net positive legacy, a net positive impact, where actually we're repairing and healing some of the issues that we need to in the world, both from an environmental and also from a social point of view. And that gives me a lot of energy.
I bet it does. That's a great and optimistic, positive place to finish. What a great conversation. Thank you so much, Rita, for all your insightful and provocative thoughts. And we unfortunately are out of time. I know many more of you had questions, but Imposter Syndrome, Love Your Imposter is the book, and Leaderbrand is the leadership training company. Thank you, Rita. Thank you for joining us. And also, if you've been listening and enjoyed the broadcast, do consider joining us at CMI. You can find out more how to do so in the chat.
Thank you.